Are Ouija boards a peculiar endeavour into the unknown, or a board game that plays upon our subconscious? The infamous board game first came around during the height of spiritualism in the West, around the mid-19th century. The board itself was first popularised during the late 19th century by the Kennard Novelty Company. At that time, seances, mediums and the like were hugely popular, albeit more so to the middle and upper classes. That is, until the release of the Ouija board. The board game is a simple construct consisting of the board itself, which is usually made from wood or cardboard, a planchette or a small glass. Some people tend to also light candles. To play the game, it is required for participants to place the tip of their finger onto the planchette and then allow the external energies, spirits, or something else to guide you from character to character on the board, to form responses to questions you intend to ask. When starting the game, it is customary to call out and invite in whatever entities are present to participate. Once in motion of the game, you can supposedly also call forth those who have passed away. When finishing a game, whilst in contact, it is imperative that you bid farewell to the entity you are channeling, and do not leave the game without doing so, lest that which you invited should stay a prolonged guest to those involved. So be sure that you follow the rules accordingly, and afterwards, put the board somewhere safe. The board has appeared in many films, such as Paranormal Activity, Witch Board, Long Time Dead, and many more. If there is one thing these films have in common in respect of the game, it would be a simple message: do not fuck with Ouija boards. In some real-life accounts, there have been deaths related to Ouija boards, where some have claimed they were instructed to kill, or that it was an entity or spirit. There are a number of entities which tend to reach out to users of a Ouija board. The most prominent and infamous would be Pazuzu, also known for being a dark force behind the possession of Raven in the classic 1973 Gothic horror, The Exorcist. The entity in modern times is said to almost exclusively make his presence known through Ouija boards, by manipulating the planchette to spell out his name, as well as many aliases, although most oftenly Zozo, as well as making it do rapid figure 8 movements or patterns across the board. For those who have the misfortune of coming into contact with Pazuzu, will experience a very friendly manner and may even find themselves contacting a supposed dead friend or relative. However, it seems this is a sick ploy to draw you in and to gradually become more antagonistic and malevolent, often devolving into profanity and making morbid threats. Yet by the time one has realised that this is not a benign entity, it is usually too late. Once conjured up, Pazuzu will allegedly cause all kinds of problems, including manipulating the emotions of any players present, appearing as a menacing shadowy figure, invading your dreams, moving objects, and causing health and mental problems. In some cases, driving the one who invoked him to insanity. He has even been reported as fully possessing people, as well as driving them to murder or suicide. Worst is that he is said to feed on fear, becoming all the more powerful the more scared you are. As with my paranormal study on sleep paralysis, I included a true story. It was a personal account, but on this episode I decided to include a personal account from another person. I thought it'd be interesting to include one which revolved around the entity I just mentioned a minute ago. The entity, or demon if you will, Pazuzu. Enjoy. You have probably heard the story of Zozo, the Ouija board demon. However, this one is different. One normal day, around 3 days after I moved out of my parents' house, I was just walking around and exploring the attic when I came across a big bookshelf where all of the shelves looked quite old and the books therein were all quite dusty. However, my eyes caught a glimpse of something quite unusual, and as I was to find out, dangerous. I took a ladder and climbed up exploring each of the stories, in hope of finding something interesting. However, there wasn't much to be found. That is until I got to the top, noticing a large box. To my surprise, it turned out to be a Ouija board. In a flurry of excitement and curiosity, I took it downstairs. I laid it onto the floor in the centre of the room, and was confused to find it without large layers of dust, unlike everything else that was on the shelf. No one owned the house for 50 years before us, which means that no one could have brushed the dust off. Later that night, my boyfriend came home from work. I showed it to him, explaining how I found the Ouija board, and that it looks as if it had just been placed there for me to find. It did not go well. He thought I was trying to trick him. He then laughed. That is, until I showed it to him. That night, I struggled to get to sleep. It was a freezing cold night, and had been pouring down all evening. And worst of all, my boyfriend went to visit his long ill mother at the hospital, leaving me alone in the new large house. I was abruptly woken up around 2:30 AM. I swear it felt as though someone had touched me, and it was when I awoke, I realised that it had become even so colder in the room. The room had this unexplainable uneasiness to it. I knew I wouldn't be able to get to sleep in there, so I went downstairs and made a bed off the couch. Around 3 AM, I woke up again to that same uneasy feeling. The room had a heavy sensation to it, and before my eyes adjusted, I felt like I was not alone. I turned my head and looked to see a featureless black figure standing next to me. I reached out to touch it. However, it appeared to dissipate and began to merge into the dark of the room. The next day I told my boyfriend. He freaked out, although he was somewhat skeptical. After a long discussion, we both agreed to use the Ouija board to try to communicate with the thing I thought we were dealing with. I wanted to know if what I saw was somehow connected to my finding of the Ouija board. Later, we waited until 12 AM struck, and we got the Ouija board out, lit several candles, and placed our forefingers onto the planchette. We started by asking the supernatural creature what its name was. We didn't get an immediate response, but I was determined. After several attempts, the planchette began to twitch, and then it slowly moved. It spelt out several letters. Z-O. Z-O. Admittedly, this was terrifying. We didn't know how to react, so we asked it several more questions. It answered each question in turn, and it seemed kind. However, when I asked it to leave, it quickly turned the planchette to no. Then in that moment, we heard several loud bangs coming from the attic. The room took a sudden chill. I could feel the hair rise on my arms and neck. We knew that letting go would be a bad idea, so we regrettably continued asking questions. We asked whether it was in the room with me last night. It responded, maybe. My boyfriend and I looked at each other, and without saying a word, we both knew we wanted to finish it up. However, I still had one last question. I took a deep breath and asked it, "What do you want?" It in turn spelled out the letters L-I-L-Y, which is my name, Lily. That was it. We told it we were leaving, and it must say goodbye. The planchette began moving in figures of 8. It then spelled out cold twice, before my boyfriend took his hand away and folded the game shut back in its box. So, that is my short study on the Ouija board, and also a very creepy account of a Ouija board user encountering the horrendous demon Pazuzu. I'm sorry the story ended ever so quickly. I would care to elaborate more. However, if you would like to hear more stories on that, please let me know in the comment section. I'd be more than happy to write some if that's the case. I am aware, however, that she did say she continued experiencing things in the house until they eventually moved. They did leave the board in the attic of the house. There is a lot of skepticism to the authenticity of a Ouija board and the accounts of those who have used it. I feel the best way for me to truly understand it would be for me to use it myself. If that does just so happen to be something you guys would like to see, please let me know once more in the comments. We will find somewhere suited for it, like an old mine, a derelict building, somewhere creepy, just to increase chances of something scary happening. So please help me by sharing this video, spreading the scares. Until next time, I bid you sweet nightmares.